Hello, I'm Cyan, and welcome back to videos. Today I want to talk about building in Minecraft. Particularly, I want to talk about survival building, which I know is, like, to some people, this weird idea of blasphemy of, like, oh, why would you go through the effort of getting stuff yourself? But to me, it's a really fun part of Minecraft, and I really do love it. But there is one downside, and that is if you see something or think of something you really want to build in Minecraft, but it requires you to use a bunch of wool blocks, a bunch of stained clay, or even worse, gold or diamonds or something, you might just end up thinking to yourself, you know what, do I really need a panda? Probably not, and then you just don't build it. But the truth is, there is often, like, replacement blocks you can use instead of these blocks to make it a bit more easy to do in survival, and because of this I figured why not go over some certain replacement blocks that can make your life so much easier if you're building survival stuff in Minecraft, and that's exactly what I'm doing today, showing you some replacement blocks to make your survival game that much easier. So hopefully you all enjoy the video. You can like it if you do because it helps out the channel and lets know you do like this sort of video. But with that said, let's get straight into talking about the first type of replacement block, and it's a really obvious one, but it's one that doesn't actually show up too often because it is the idea of replacing, you know, like either diamonds, iron blocks, emerald blocks, any of the ore blocks with just simply using the wool of that type. So for instance, over here you can see the shovels are meant to be made out of iron on the left and then gold on the right. This is the tumble logo in case you're curious, but replaced with the golden shovel. And as you can see, yeah, this is meant to be made out of really expensive blocks you'd never be able to get in survival, but as you can see, with just a few replacements, so for instance, getting rid of some of the more expensive resources around the edge here, using wool instead of that, and then using wool on the shovels, we've made this so much cheaper to produce. Instead of requiring like 100 iron and 100 gold, it requires just 10 blocks of wool and 10 blocks of yellow wool, which is actually a lot easier to get than anything else like that. And the great thing about this is this doesn't just work for like, oh yeah, replace it with that and make it look a little bit woolly. If you want, you can do the entire opposite thing and you can replace them with stained clay instead, if that's something you find easier. And I know stained clay and wool are still somewhat tricky to get, compared to like wood or stone or something like that, but the fact that you can make any color, any form of color thing that usually would require, diamond blocks or emeralds in creative, which as you can see if we look around here, there's quite a few of those lying around. I think it's great that you can make those with the wool, and here's just a good example of how that works and how that can work in two different ways for two different colors, and will in future, by the way, work for concrete as well, which I think is just a much easier way to do something. So you can see there's a beam made out of wool, there's one made out of stained clay. The ability to switch between these two things, it will change a lot of characteristics of the build, but it doesn't mean it's not worth doing if you only have one block and not the other. So with that said, let me move on to the second limitation, which is one that's going to be a lot more useful because it's then trying to switch out the stained clay for something else. So for instance, here we can see this is a stained clay elephant. I really love this thing. It's not too hard to produce, but getting a whole stack of like stained clay can be kind of tricky compared to just getting a stack of stone. So the great thing about this example right here, I've got the again stained clay on the left and stone on the right here, is you can actually use the fact that it's stone to give it just an entirely different texture and even an entirely different theme. So yeah, this is a very cartoon animal. This looks like it's like a toy animal from like a giant room or something like that. But if we look at this elephant, this looks like it's a statue of an elephant, memorizing an elephant or whatever. And also, by doing a few little changes to it, we can have this really different, really rather more interesting in my opinion, kind of elephant. And also the other upside of using stone instead of using stained clay is we can make this much bigger if we wanted to. So yeah, if you ever see an elephant or anything like that made out of stained clay in a color like this, just bear in mind stone is not too far off, and by just changing a simple aspect of the build, from a toy into a statue, we can get the exact same shape and the exact same style, and arguably in a better way. So yeah, that's the elephant over here compared to the elephant over there. I realize I did the trunk slightly different, slightly wrong here, but you can see, otherwise it's just the same elephant, but this one looks better in my opinion in some ways than the one that took so many more resources. So along this same line, you can replace two different blocks actually when it comes to leaves, because leaves can be a good replacement for glass. If you need lots of glass, you want to be able to see through something, glass is kind of tricky to come by. You gotta smelt some sand, then craft it, and who has all that effort? So instead, why not use leaves? This is a really kind of, it's a cheap man's glass, but it actually has a very different effect on the build, and again, you have to kind of change the classification of it, but it's not only that it has this weird classification change and the fact that it looks kind of different and cool in that way, but also it's a throwback to the early days of Minecraft survival, because leaves existed before glass, so a lot of the oldest builds you'll ever see use leaves instead, and this is a cool way to throw back to that while also not having to craft glass, which I think is a kind of cool two-in-one thing you can do there. So yeah, the next set of replacement blocks is a really great one. If you don't want to come by some pink wool, or you don't want to come by really anything, you can replace most blocks with an entirely different block. And again, although this one looks like it's an aged unicorn, again, it's roughly the same build exactly, but you can see there's a few changes here by using green, the leaves as green wool, using granite as pink wool, and in this way, we've used natural blocks, saved ourselves all of that sheep shearing effort. And then we get this, again, it's an entirely different looking thing, but it's not necessarily worse. I'd argue in some ways the one on the right here looks better. It looks, again, slightly more realistic in ways. And I just wanted to kind of show that there's one more example of like, oh yes, pretty much any animal you can take or any build you can take that uses wool. This is just what people use in creative because that's how people do things. But if you want, you can just take the exact same thing, build it with survival blocks, and there's something more endearing and charming about doing that way. And I think that's kind of wonderful. However, it doesn't just have to be like, to save time, to save resources. Sometimes you can actually switch blocks out to make something more functional or to make something, functional in an entirely different way. So a good example of this would be this block right here. As you can see, it's a, so over there, we've got a fence gate, so you open it normally. But if you want to have a different functional form of that and you don't want to craft fence gates, and you want it to like blend with the rest of your fences, you can use a replacement block of a piston underneath the fence. So by doing it this way, we actually have the exact same system where, as you can see, boom, we got a fence that goes up and down based on this thing right here. As you can see, it's wonderful. We got a fence gate that works in pistons instead, and this means that when it's kind of locked down, it blends a lot better, and also it's easier to craft, and it's just a really good replacement in that way. So as well as being able to replace blocks to change the, to save yourself gold and diamonds, which are pretty valuable, and to save yourself even just stained clear wool, you can use it to actually change the theme of the build and to make it look more consistent, which I think this definitely looks more consistent than that over there, but maybe that's just my opinion. But as well as doing stuff like that, you can also use it to save resources. So yeah, or save resources, but also get resources you don't have. So oh, by the way, again, here's one more example of the green leaves thing, because leaves can not only be used, over there, not only used as leaves and stuff. You can also replace, any wool block, any stained clay, emerald blocks, and slime. There is 4 blocks replaced by this 1 block, which is infinitely easy to get. Because bear in mind, this entire block, which is roughly a slime cube, right? This entire block of, leaves would only take you about like 2 minutes in the wild with some shears to get this, as opposed to the, like many, close to an hour, I'd say, to get any of the other ones, which just means many hours for that, I should say, which means that this is just objectively better, and it also has a very different kind of theme to it. So entirely recommend. Leaves are just a wonderful replacement block, and they're kind of a key point from everything else we're going through today. But yeah, as well as having that as a wonderful replacement block, we've also got, just towards the end here, the replacement of blocks that you cannot naturally get in your world. So if you see a build that's just amazing and it uses Prismarine, you might think, oh yeah, well, I can't really do that too well, so I guess that's kind of sad. But the wonderful thing about this is that if you don't have Prismarine, try instead using, like a Cyan wool or Cyan carpets over some glowstone. So here you can see, this is kind of like a replacement for both Prismarine and for sea lanterns, because when we set the time to night, it works like sea lanterns, because again, it's carpet on the thing, and also it looks a bit like Prismarine. This could be, this is a build that should be using Prismarine, but because we don't have it, because we don't have an ocean element, instead we get this, and we get this, again, I think it looks better in a lot of ways, and that's a style change that can make your life easier and also make something a bit better, because you replace both sea lanterns and Prismarine just with this 1 block. But also, if you want to go beyond that, a thing you can actually do is replace other blocks in your builds with ones that are just slightly easier to get. So for instance, do you have too much andesite and your stone bricks kind of valuable? Replace the stone bricks, like this build was meant to have stone bricks in it. I replaced them with andesite, and I think you get a very, again, a way more complementary pattern. And by replacing lots of different blocks in the build you have, not only do you make the build more unique and more tailored to you, which is always a good thing, but you also get this kind of effect where you can make the builds look better and make them complementary in ways that the original builder might not have come up with. And that's the kind of point in today's video. No matter how you're building in Minecraft, there's always ways to switch things up and build better or to build different. Do you want to build your same logo you've just built before, but build it with, stained clay to get the smoother effect? You can do that. Do you want to build your unicorn that was so horribly, like not offensive, but horrible to look at before, but slightly older? Here you go, we've just aged the unicorn by 20 years. Do you want to turn your toy statue into a real statue? You can do this by using replacement blocks, and it's something I feel like a lot of people miss, so hopefully today's video did inspire you in some way. And one more example, before we go, is if you have some railways that are too expensive and you think, I don't want to do that, try replacing them with ice and putting some boats over them. So yeah, here we go, replace this with ice, and now we can take boats to a place, or, use water. Whatever you got to do, you can replace other blocks, replacing things with other things is something that you probably have to learn if you want to build something and you think you can at some point. Here's the video that tells you that, yeah, you can do it anywhere. You're the man who's in charge, you're the person who's in charge of their own destiny, and that's an important life lesson, maybe. I don't know, but I hope you enjoyed the video. Like it if you liked it, share if you really liked it, and subscribe if you're new around here, because I make videos like this one every single day on my channel, and if you subscribe, you'll see them daily on your homepage. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!